Hello, and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers and those who support them. I'm marathon swimmer and coach Shannon Keegan. I had the pleasure of catching up with Guy Davis today while he's on vacation in Florida. The Irish-born British citizen who spent time growing up in Africa and currently resides in the States finds variety his fuel. While Guy trained with Dover solo author Marcia Cleveland in the 90s, it wasn't until 2015 that he started pushing distance himself. Preferring the external focus of a race, his races started getting longer and longer over the last few years. Then Guy succumbed to the challenge of the English Channel. Not even COVID could stop him. While Guy swears solo marathon swimming isn't his thing, I wonder if he might strike out across another body of water before too long. I hope you enjoy this episode. Guy, thanks for being our guest today. What's your
Thank you for the
story?
invitation. Well, I'll try and keep it short. So my story is that I'm a swimmer because my sister is a swimmer. So when I was a kid, I was the second kid, and everything my sister did, I had to do. So I had to do the ballet lessons, I had to do the French lessons, and then she did the swimming lessons. So I had to do the swimming lessons, and then she was on the swim team. So I had to be in the swim team. I was actually petrified of water. And the only way that my mother could actually get me into the pool when I was a kid was she bought me fins and a sword so that I could like run off the diving board and jump into the pool. And I was armed in case any kind of evil creature was going to attack me. And then I would sprint at massive speed to the corner of the pool and jump out, before anything could catch me. So this is how she got me to swim.
Your mom's a genius.
She actually, well, I'll tell you another funny story. When I was very tiny, apparently I climbed up onto the roof of our house, and the nanny, she left me in the care of the nanny, was hysterical, and I'm sitting up on the roof, and my mother came home, and this was not a great situation. So she said, rather than getting hysterical, she said, "Oh, Guy, you're on the roof." Said, "How clever." Said, "How did you get there?" And knowing that I wasn't very articulate, I said, "Oh, I'll show you." So I started climbing down, at which point she grabbed me, she's like, "Get it." So she definitely had some parenting instincts that that she probably needed from time to time. But anyway, that was kind of how it started. And then I was kind of like, Save It Up Sammy and in the swim team. I didn't really like training, but I really loved the sprints at the end. And so that got me, and then we started getting into the age group, swim competitions, and it kind of went from there. And then I was a pretty serious age group swimmer, junior swimmer through till 18 when I finished high school and went on to college. And then that was my last year of serious swimming, because college swimming wasn't a very big thing in the UK at that point, and my college didn't even have a pool. So then I just became, after that, a sort of casual swimmer, and then a master swimmer, and then a kind of weekend warrior triathlete. I mean, I love to swim. I did quite a bit of swimming to stay fit, but not too serious. And then I kind of got back, really pushed back into being much more swimming focused in my 40s. Because my hips had given up on me and I had hip replacements, and swimming was something I could come back to and I could, do quite seriously and really enjoy. So that kind of really brought me back into the master swimming world in the early 2000s. And then, since then, and by the way, I've always been an open water swimmer. I mean, my swim team in London, we used to have an annual trip, coincidentally enough, to Dover Harbour. And we'd all jump on the coach, we'd all head down to Dover Harbour, we'd all have ice cream and on the beach, and then we had a 1,000-yard race across the harbour, And it was fun. So and I grew up, in my younger years. Much of it was in Africa, and so swimming outdoors, and my dad was loved swimming outdoors a lot. So I was always out in the water, and then so from 40, then I got back into master swimming. I did a lot of open water racing. I've always been, as a triathlete and as a swimmer, loved the open water stuff. Typically, the 1, 2, 3, miles. And then I sort of around about I think 2015, I went to swim vacation in Bermuda for that round the sound race.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, we can swim a little bit longer. And then I think the following year I entered the USMS 10 mile, which was held by Phil up in the Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my first sort of foray into the ultra endurance. And it was really only facilitated. This is when my friend David said, I said, oh, I'm thinking about doing this swim. And I said, but I don't have a kayak. He said, I'm a kayaker. We're doing it. So I had no excuse not to do it logistically. And we had a blast. We had a whale of a time. And then it kind of like, I sort of drifted up to, maybe I should try some of these longer swims. And then around 2018, I was kind of ready to, kind of sort of tempted by the Channel Challenge, which I'd known a lot about. I've swam with so many Channel swimmers over the years. I swim so regularly with Bob Fernald. In the 90s, when I lived in New York, I swam a bunch with Marsha Cleveland, who's, kind of a marathon legend at this point. And I mean, I'm not sure if that helped or hindered my interest in the Channel, because, the intensity with which, I saw Marsha do her preparation, it's like, oh my God, this is serious.
Yeah.
But it, I obviously knew it was there. I was kind of slightly interested. I always said, no, I'm not interested. But then, I don't know.
Peer pressure.
A little bit of peer pressure, a little bit of midlife crisis, a little bit of kind of bucket list. If you're going to do it, you better get on and do it while you still can, kind of thing. So that's kind of what took me into my little excursion into the ultra endurance world. But I mean, I'm always going to be in the open water swimming world, and I'm always going to be out there. Well, with John, I'm not going to be out there when it's 40 degrees, but I'm going to be out there with him when it's 55. So that's really the story. And then the last 3 years, I've done a kind of series of big things, and then I had a very extraordinary COVID year, which was my Channel slot, and kind of all was a little different from what I'd planned, but it ended up turning out really very, very well. I'm extremely happy with it.
I suspect you shed the fins and the sword at some point. Did you?
I did. Okay. Well, my early coach was not going to allow me to do the fins and the sword, but I'm sometimes tempted to think maybe that sword would help. When you're out there and you're worried about the big fish, it's like maybe the psychology of the sword is a good one.
But you didn't have any fears after that initially, maybe, even though you
started doing I just no. I've always had sort of like lizard brain fears about that. I don't think there's any. Well, there may be some completely fearless people, but I don't know how you can't have like normal human programming and not be out there and experience some of these fears. So I think you just have, and the more time you spend out there, the more, you feel comfortable with it. But it's an alien environment. There are these things that live in it that, some of them might be inclined to eat you. So it's not a stupid fear, but it's just a statistically highly improbable thing to worry about, that stuff. And actually, it's the other stuff, I think, that's the more challenging stuff. It's the jellyfish and it's the cold. These are the real challenges you sometimes have to deal with. Typically, although every once in a while you do hear about an open swimmer having an encounter with a nasty beast. I'm sure you all know those stories. So, but I'm not fearful, but it's there.
I like thinking of it as a lizard brain. I that's going to help me compartmentalize it. So thank you for that. So your first marathon swim was Round the Sound, you said, in like 2015?
Yes, yeah, that was a 10K in
Yeah.
2015. Then I
But
did
you had been
the.
swimming in the 90s, you said, with Marsha Cleveland
I
and
had. Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I've been swimming kind of forever on
Hmm.
shorter open water swims, and
What was it that kind of sparked you to try doing this little longer thing?
um, I, I love variety. I love changing things up. I like setting new goals. I like even in the pool swimming. I kind of have ups and downs, and I'll sort of say, I'm going to do some distance this year, or I'm going to focus on my IM, or this year let's do a 200 fly. I haven't done one of those for a decade. It's that kind of thing.
Mm.
And so it's the same with the open water. It's just like slightly different challenges, new challenges, pushing into out of my comfort zone into new stuff, and also an excuse to do to go different places and hang out with fun people. And it's kind of the sort of swim tourist thing is kind of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was it like when you completed this first marathon swim? Was it?
Um, it, I was actually exhausted. I mean, it was quite warm. There was basically no hydration on the course.
Oh, goodness.
Um, and I mean, they had a little bit of Gatorade at the first couple of stops, but it seemed to be less and less of it
Interesting.
yeah. So I got to the end of the 10K, and it's like, oh God, I'm completely spent at this point. And but it was great. I mean, it's a gorgeous setting, and have plenty of things to see. Great group. You're in a sort of vacation environment. Lots of my friends were there, so I had a great time. But it wasn't. They didn't just kind of like jump in there and crush it. I mean, I was pretty
Mm.
tired.
Hmm.
So I learned that you need to be in good shape to
Yeah.
complete marathon distance stuff.
Why did you want to do something else long after that?
Challenge out of the comfort zone.
Yeah.
See what I could do. And almost all of my swims I've done are actually races. So I mean,
Mm.
that's kind of one of my motivators. I like to race. I like to rate the shorter distances, and so let's see how I can do in racing the longer distances. And
Hmm.
I've only done one ultra endurance swim that's kind of a solo. Everything else was in the context of a race, Phil's races
Right.
or other races. So I like that part of it. And the race environment means you're there with a ton of other swimmers.
Right.
So people behind, yeah. So and that to me adds to the atmosphere and the enjoyment and the challenge. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm made to be one of these kind of people who just kind of goes out there on their own with their team and heads off some giant piece of water. And that hasn't that I've only done that once. It was great, but I think I still enjoy the sort of the racing aspect.
Yeah, that's good to know. Tell us about your first time in the Northeast Kingdom in Vermont.
It was great. I mean, it was a 10 miler. You know, who cannot enjoy hanging out with Phil and his merry crew. Weather was fantastic. Great day. Lots of people I know and love. So great to hang out there. Great weekend. Really fun swim. And then lots of beers with my kayaker afterwards. It was awesome.
Yeah, and you still perceive that as kind of a race, even though you're pretty much, eventually, pretty soon you're by yourself. It doesn't take
Well,
long.
it's funny. It turned out that I wasn't.
Okay.
Because it was I mean, I was by myself for quite a bit, and then there were literally they were obviously people all over the course. And I do remember poor old Chris Grafe was in that race, and
Mhm.
his less experienced kayaker than my kayaker seemed to take him on a kind of like a 3 mile diversion somewhere. So I never saw him. But I found myself coming alongside Laurie Hugg, and we were swimming together for quite a long time. So actually, I did have some company, and obviously I have my kayak company. So it wasn't quite the solo experience.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, obviously, on the big races, people thin out, and you can be pretty much out there on your own.
But it's fun though. It is energizing to come upon somebody and just be like, oh, like who is that? Or should I catch that person? Or I don't know. So I get what you're saying about the setting and kind of
Yeah,
preferring that
yeah, and
setting.
it's also beautiful. So and I'm also very lucky. I've never had a sort of a big thing, blown out or washed out by
Mm.
the weather. So I've shown up and the weather's been nice, and had a great swim. So long way to
Yeah, I was gonna say,
continue.
you just jinxed yourself. Even for the channel, you had no problems for the English channel.
Well, the channel is a little bit different in the sense that my window was started on the 24th of September, and the weather forecast for beyond the 23rd was horrendous. So my pilot, there was a brief weather window on the 21st and the 22nd. So my pilot actually brought me forward to that window, and he was a little bit nervous about it because it was a fairly brief window and difficult to predict. We went on my first day out of quarantine from the COVID quarantine travel, so I was kind of lucky that my quarantine ended just in time to jump into the window, and it was a very big tide. And he was also struggling with whether he wanted to go later in the window and land during the day, or earlier in the window but having to land in the middle of a moonless night.
Mm.
So there are a bunch of interesting considerations about that. But but the window was there. So and it turned out to be a good weather window, but it was quite brief, and it wasn't part of the sort of the original the original 24th of September and beyond slot, which I've got some pictures of what Windy showed on the 24th of September, and it was insane. I was still in Dover, and it was insane. So there was no swimming happening for
Hmm.
quite a while. So again, I got lucky because they were able to shift my slot to shift my start to a time that worked.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell us about it. The one solo ultra endurance. What was your training like? How did all
Um,
that?
let's see. Well, first thing was I had a really good plan. I mean, I booked in 2018. I had a really good plan. The plan went great. The build up went great. I had my intermediates like the Border Buster in 2019, a whole bunch of other races. I have, all my training. I'm. It's really nice to see some of my pod on here. We've got Bob. We've got Cheryl. Um, John, these are the guys I get to swim with really regularly. So I have an incredible infrastructure of sort of training environment. But so that was all great. I was a little beaten up at the end of 2019. I'd raced a ton, so I had a few things I needed to work out in terms of physically getting. And 2020 was my sole focus. Channel swim, and I booked into in 2019. I got lucky, and a swim quest camp in Croatia, their long distance channel camp. They had a cancellation late, and so I actually jumped in a year earlier than I'd planned to do a week over there in Croatia, and that was actually very helpful for my 2019 swimming. So that was really good for my preparation. I was planning to go back to Croatia for 2 weeks in 2020, and then I finally got an invitation from Ned to go to Cork Distance Week in 2020. So I was going to build my training plan for the channel around those two camps plus. But then, obviously things changed in March. And it's like,
Hmm.
where's the water? Camps canceled. So, I had to do quite a bit of adaptation. I did a bunch of land training that I wouldn't have done, but actually probably was good for me. I have,
Probably. Do you say probably good for you?
I it's probably good for me. And I have this marvelous machine which was invented in the 1960s. It's a resistance exerciser called an exogeny. And I did like hours and hours and hours and hours using this exogeny. It's kind of like doing band work. And that really substituted very, very effectively for being in the water. And then by the time, May came around and, the open water opened up and, you know, Bob and Cheryl are jumping in Kingston Pond. It's 50 degrees, and I'm kind of like edging in behind them, and and Cheryl was on had a similar goals and build up. So so Cheryl and I did quite a few of our longer swims together, and Bob designed a really nice sort of build up plan. So we did, and we have great, as I say, we have great open water in New Hampshire. So Bow Lake, Kingston Lake, and then eventually getting back into the ocean. So I was able to do, everything I needed to in terms of, build up and distance, and in a sort of slightly camp-like environment, because I had company and I, had mentoring, coaching support, and so all of that was fine. And then I also was very lucky. I had to do my 6 hour, which I was planning to do in Croatia, and I have a friend in Jacksonville in Florida, a lady called Erin O'Leary, who's a great marathon swimmer, done around Manhattan, Catalina, a bunch of other stuff. And she had, a long time prior, invited me to come with her to the Finger Lakes to spend time with Bridget, which was one of her kind of like training camp things. And I said, I'm doing Croatia, I'm doing Ireland, it's fine. But then, once those fell away, it's like, hey, I can still do the Finger Lakes. So she sort of re-invited me, and I went with her and with Ruth, who was on the call last week with Bridget. And we had this kind of like little mini camp. And it turned out to be a great mini camp. We did 2 6 hours, we did a 3 hour, and we got the 6 hour done, the qualifier done. The first 6 hour wasn't a qualifier because we couldn't find enough cold water, because this mysterious Seneca Lake was blowing all the warm water to us. But then a couple of days later, it was plenty cold. And we got more than enough cold water to get the 6 hour. But that was kind of like a nice substitute as well. So, and then back home we did, obviously all the sort of the regular stuff. And then one of my highlights in the prep was there's an event over in London, in the UK, that the British Long Distance Swimming Association do, which they call the Champion of Champions. And I'd happened to be in the UK on the weekend it was offered in 2019 in Dover. So I went down and I did that, and I really loved it. It was it's this thing where you do a 5 mile swim, a 3 mile swim, and a 1 mile swim in succession, and there's a sort of fixed starting time for each of these swims, and they do it fairly early in the season, so it was like 57 degrees, fairly cool water. And so part of the challenge is kind of like getting, rewarming and getting back in. Yeah. But you have successively smaller swims. And we organized what we called the sort of the Rye Beach, kind of Champion of Champions training day on a very similar format where, we started each successive swim after, a sort of fixed time. And we made it slightly more ambitious. I think we ended up doing more like, kind of closer to 6-4-2 to 5-3-1. And because, it was on the beach, we could get a bunch of people there and be socially distanced. And because everybody was like so lockdown crazy, just had so many people from around the area show up, and it turned into this kind of like jamboree. It was great fun. And then we had a big sort of socially distanced pizza party afterwards. So and for me, it was fabulous because I had really good swimming company the whole day. And we hammered it pretty hard. So, the distance was good, but the intensity was there. And, I loved that. So that was a really, really solid day. And then we did a very similar thing about a month later, just before I left. So that was the preparation phase. And so I left feeling very strong, very ready, headed over. Because of COVID, you had to do this 14 months isolation. Because of COVID, my crew, couldn't afford to take a month away to do this and that. So yeah. I was very lucky to recruit replacement crew from friends I'd made in the Croatia camp in 2019, who both swimmers. One's a channel swimmer. Both have crewing experience. Actually, had crewing experience together. So that was great. It's like it's much nicer traveling alone, traveling together than traveling alone. But I had that substitute. So then I sort of survived through quarantine. It was a bit isolated, but we have the internet, and that's great. They call it the Dover coaster over there, this kind of roller coaster of when are you going to go, what's going to happen. So you live through that. And I was a little bit stir crazy from quarantine, and I was probably too much in my own head for that period as a result of it. So I was pretty mentally, wound up when the day came. And as I was mentioning earlier, it was a call about, when do we go? Do we go on the 2:00 afternoon tide when the wind is beginning to drop, and then it'll drop as we continue through the swim? But we do half the swim in the middle of the night, and we land in a moonless night. So Stuart Gleason, my pilot from Sea Leopard, he was, fretting a little bit about that, because it's hard to land your swim. It's a little harder to keep them safe. But he liked the security of knowing the window was going to be clean from a weather point of view. Because if we'd gone on the next tide at night, we'd have been swimming into the day, but there was a risk that the wind was going to come back and take out the back half of the swim and make it very, very problematic. And he was also a little bit conscious of the fact that we were going on a spring tide, a very big 7-meter tide. So we were going to be doing a lot of, moving up and down the channel as a result. But I was very interested in all this, and I kind of got myself ready for either scenario. But I really wanted to go, and I was really, really happy when you said we're going to go on the afternoon tide on the Monday. And there was a little bit of trepidation about the night swimming. I practiced the night swimming, but I hadn't done as much night swimming as we were going to do. But my crew, they were great. They were just so calm. They said, "Don't worry about the night swimming. It's really quite serene out there. You'll be absolutely fine." They all knew each other, and even my observer turned out to be one of my crew's crew. When she had swum the channel 3 weeks earlier, she'd brought her date forward a year, which was kind of amazing, because she'd been prevented from doing a Jersey to France swim by her weather window being blown out. And then because of the various changes around COVID, a slot became available for her to do the channel, which she hadn't been planning to do until this year. So she'd done the channel, and so they were a really good crew. They were just very comfortable with each other, really professional. So I had total confidence in the whole thing. So you just say, "Yeah, let's go," and off we went. And it turned out to be a pretty serene experience, actually, because although it was kind of a little bit lumpy at the beginning, and you have those wobbles that say, "Oh, yeah, how long are we going to have to handle this?" It became quite calm, and we went through just a beautiful early fall day. 64 in, 64 out, so conditions were great. Beautiful. I had the boat to my left. I had the sunset to my right. So the sunset illuminated the boat, and I could look out and I could see the sun setting. And then just after the sunset, the crescent moon was behind it in pretty much the same trajectory. And so then the moon set. And so, and that, and all these kind of like brightly lit, ferries are passing by. So it was really very, very serene. And it was my crew who did a lot to help me get in that mindset to really enjoy that. So those were the things that, the sort of special, unexpected things that helped me with the whole mental process of getting through it. And the swim itself almost went perfectly. It just literally, we got in the rhythm, we got in the zone, and just like, to feed. I felt weary, but I felt strong the whole way. and it almost went perfectly, even as we kind of like headed into the night. No, we just kept moving, and it was great. And
Why do you say almost perfectly?
well, I call it the curious incident of the half hard-boiled egg in the night. So one of my kind of feed eccentricities is I have a fairly conventional feed. The Carbo Pro, and I like a little bit of mushed oatmeal from time to time. But I also have been using hard-boiled eggs, half a hard-boiled egg, just in a few of the later feeds, to put a little bit of protein in there as well.
Yeah.
And it worked great for me in earlier swims, and I tested it. So middle of the night, I don't know where we were, but anyway, it's the first hard-boiled egg feed. So they give me the half hard-boiled, and they've been the whole time. Stuart has been like, he's been a bit of a sort of feeding Nazi. I mean, the very first feed, I'm great first feed, lovely warm feed. Stuart runs out from the pilot house and he shouts, quick feed, quick feed, quick feed. And it's like, whoa. And then my crew and observers shout, quick feed, quick feed. So it's like, oh yeah, quick feed, quick feed. I mean, obviously he's trying to keep the feeds nice and compressed because he's, trying to run me to the right spot. So oh yeah, yes, yeah. So I'm getting in the habit of pushing the feeds down, for me, pretty quickly. I mean, I know some people can feed amazingly fast, but anyway, so I'm in this kind of quick feed mentality, and I'm chewing down this boiled egg, and the bits of boiled egg are going everywhere, and getting kind of, and then a goddamn piece of egg white just lodges itself in the top of my airway.
Oh goodness!
And it's like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So I turn over back into the swim. It's like I'm like coughing, and I'm really trying to get rid of this egg white. And I'm like coughing and coughing and coughing. It's like, oh my God, it just won't go. It won't go down. It won't go up. And so I'm doing this for a while, and I'm trying to keep swimming not very quickly, with my crew looking down at me thinking, what's going on? What's it? And, later on they said, well, we weren't sure whether you were coughing or whether you were puking, but we were sure that you weren't going to get any more boiled egg. But it eventually settled, and then after a while my breathing was fine. I don't know where the piece of egg white went, but that was kind of like my sort of slightly scary incident in what was otherwise very, very smooth, kind of swim. And then you just swim, and then I had no idea where I was, and I couldn't see anything. It was completely black.
Yeah.
I mean, the boat was lighting me. But then at some point, I actually saw a light up on my right, and I thought, that's got to be the lighthouse on the cap. And so I thought, okay, we're getting somewhere here. And then that turned out to be the case. And I had no idea where we were relative to the light. But then, eventually, I remember my penultimate feed, I was thinking, oh, I hope this is the last feed. I hope this is the last feed. And then they fed me, and it's like, they didn't say anything. It's like, okay, so I just have to keep going. I don't know where I am. I don't know where land is. It's like, how many more? And then, but the next feed, it's like, last feed. So it's like, way. And then they threw the little tender boat off. They were towing a tender boat. Sean, the co-pilot, jumped in there. And it's like blackness ahead. And then he had this kind of like, helmet spotlight, and they were showing a spotlight from the boat. And then they kind of guided me in, and we kind of landed literally in front of a cliff face.
Wow.
Just on the northeast side of the cap. I was to discover. It's like I get there, it's like, okay, I can't get any further. Can I climb on a rock or something? And then they blew the horn, and that was that. But no, I mean, just very, in a sense, very, other than that stupid egg thing, quite low drama, very just in the rhythm of the whole swim. So kind of almost enjoyable.
Did you book another one?
Well, it's really funny. I jump out. My crew is WhatsApping my family with really good regular updates. and they WhatsApp a picture of me, back on the boat. And my wife, Barbara, says, "Oh, he looks great. He looks fine. Throw him in. He can do it again." And it's like, yeah, no, I'm not planning to book another one. I think as far as the channel is concerned, I'm very happily one and done. But it was great. Kind of different from everything I imagined. I mean, you imagine running up on the beach and getting your pebbles, and these are all the videos you see of people finishing their swim.
Right.
But for me, it was kind of like, oh well, okay, but
climb up on a rock by a cliff.
They told me I made it to France, right? I mean, I've limited independent verification of that. But they told me this is France. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
That's funny. What's the swim you're most proud of?
I'm actually pleased. I've been very, very happy with all of my sort of endurance swims. I'm kind of happy with them. I'm not necessarily sort of proud of them. I'm happy with them. The thing I think I really reflect on being proud of is the whole channel plan and how I executed the plan. So it wasn't so much the swim. I didn't have to do anything, sort of, above and beyond, and you sort of dig deep and, sort of survive an arm falling off or any of that kind of stuff. And some people do. Some people go through they push themselves through extraordinary limits to get to complete their swim. But the process, the build-up process, I'm actually very proud of how I designed and executed that for me, and the adjustments along the way that were necessary, and just kind of like sticking with it through the sort of the COVID disruptions, and keeping to adapting, but keeping to the goal. And then I'm obviously proud of how I executed the swim. I wound myself up. I think prepared myself very, very well mentally, and that was a really interesting process. All that mental preparation, maybe a little over prepared mentally, but so yeah. So obviously it gives me, and I only have this one big, sort of solo endurance swim on my resume. So I mean, obviously I'm going to be be very happy with that.
Mm-hmm. But you're not going to do any other solo. You think you're one and done channel, one and done solo, going back to races?
I'm definitely going back to races. This year is a kickback year to just kind of regroup and sort of make decisions about what I want to focus on next. I have always enjoyed swimming the short Manhattan races I've done. Mm-hmm. And I love venue events, and the idea of swimming around Manhattan Island, it kind of excites me. So if something pulls me back, I think I'll probably, I actually did try to, I tried to get a lottery place a couple of years ago for 20 bridges, around Manhattan, but I wasn't successful in the lottery. So I will probably look for a lottery place to do Manhattan at some point in the future, but I'll wait and see. I go through these cycles of sort of swimming focus, and after I've had a big focus, whether it's a big pool meet or whatever, I like to kind of I like to kick back and then decide where to go next. So that's kind of where I am right now. But I love open water. I'm going to do unlimited open water as long as I can. Mm-hmm. How many other long swims I want to do, I'm not sure. I haven't made any plans.
Yeah. Is there anything you haven't finished?
I failed to finish a half Ironman when I was younger, living in the DC area. It was just like an unbelievably hot day, and I just pulled myself out on the run. I was just, I was feeling dizzy, and I was thinking, they need me at work on Monday. Discretion better part of valor, but I don't think in the swim. I mean, as I say, I've only taken on a few of these really, really bigger swims, and I've been very lucky with the circumstances. So I don't think I've had a swimming DNF, not
Mhm.
that I can remember.
Mhm. Kind of coming at your swims from this kind of like racing perspective, like how do
Yeah.
you handle, I don't know, like do you find yourself like in the middle, like, ooh, there's somebody up there, I'm gonna go get them, and just kind of trying to pick people off the whole way, and
That mentality definitely helps. And I think the reason for me it helps is it gives you an external focus for what you're trying to do in your swim. And I definitely, even with the channel, I'm not racing anyone. I mean, there were only two people who went on my tide. So I mean, I never saw them, and in the middle of the night you're not going to see anyone anyway. But I find that type of mental approach very helpful because it's outward. It's not, and I find when I get into trouble mentally, it's when I'm too inward. I'm thinking about, oh, am I getting cold? Am I, whereas if you've got an outward focus, it's like, no, it's like I'm getting there, and I don't want to get this person get too far ahead of me, and I don't want this person to catch me, so I need to stay on my zone. So I think it's that as much as anything, as actually the racing per se, that helps me at least mentally on these longer swims in the when the conditions might otherwise kind of have you thinking about other things.
Mhm. Yeah. So what kind of mental preparation did you take on going to the English Channel, knowing you're not going to be able to pick off your opponents?
Well, the cold preparation for me was the biggest thing that I really had to handle. The cold, the qualifying swims in the cold, I found very, very hard. And I knew that you know I, I didn't know what it felt like being in English Channel temperatures for 12 hours or whatever it was going to be. So I knew I needed to have a sort of a mental game for that. So I did quite a bit of preparation around sort of cold protection visualization and self-talk
Hmm.
that I took into the channel. And I developed sort of visualizations that really work for me. And for me, it's all about the engine. It's like you keep the engine running. The engine, drives the heat. And if you can do that, then you get yourself into an equilibrium that you might be cold on the outside, but you're driving the engine, you're keeping moving forward, and the cold can wait for later. So those sorts of visualizations I worked on quite a bit, and I sometimes I need a little bit of distraction, so I use mental playlists. I use just loads and loads of mantras, and I'll sometimes develop a mantra for the moment. I really like using my environment to create positive energy, and all of that stuff, literally all of that stuff, the mental preparation I've done, helped me in the channel. The whole thing, every single piece of it, I found some of it that worked for me at a particular time.
Mhm.
So when the cold came in, and I started, kind of feeling a little bit inside, I was very resilient to the cold, because, just I mentally prepared. As I got tired, again, I was mentally prepared for that in the darkness, and, I prepared myself for taking positivity out of all of that rather than negativity out of all of that. So, and I had 2 weeks in quarantine with nothing to do but, look for strange hypnosis tapes and, work on my mental playlist and that kind of thing. So, that stuff was great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
but but you
no,
said
no, no.
but.
Well, I, the but was that I got to the end of the swim and I was still mentally very wound. So the
You're
thing
ready to
that
go
was,
back?
well, in a sense, you could keep going because the mental thing was there, but
Mhm.
the really strange thing was like coming down from it after the
Mm,
swim
interesting.
took me much longer than I had expected. I thought I would just kind of like kick back, but I was really kind of mentally revved up. And obviously, there's the sort of the pleasure, the gratification, the euphoria of completing this thing that you've been working on for a while. And so you put that into the mix, and it's like, wow, I was amped. So and I was surprised at how sort of persistent that feeling was in the kind of the days and weeks. I know a lot of people. I think some people experience kind of depression after they've completed a big swim, because it's like, what am I going to do next? And this goal that they've been working towards, this kind of emptiness ahead of it. I didn't have any of that. I just had a nice kind of buzzy afterglow, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, that is interesting. And I was trying to think, somebody, I can't remember who it was, somebody was saying it was like, for them, finishing a swim is like finishing a really good book, but they didn't want it to end, and it's interesting. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to get the buzzy afterglow, even if you took some time to decompress mentally.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
those sound very good mental technique or preparation techniques that you shared. So thank you for that. What about, have you learned anything about yourself from marathon swimming?
Um, yeah, I'm a real pussy in cold water. I'm just such a wimp. So that's true. I mean,
But you went into the English Channel, so you overcame. I think that's
yeah, no, I mean, I think it was good to, it was definitely good to push myself out of my comfort zone and take something on, and kind of prove to myself that yeah, I can do this. I'm not sure I learned very much about myself. I think I was I mean, my wife will probably disagree, but I think I was relatively self-aware around my strengths and weaknesses, and I think my plan was quite well designed to make the most of my strengths and to really, make sure that I could get through those weaknesses. So I'm not sure that there was something special. I think it just kind of like reinforce the things that I've learned, and I kind of use them sort of even more effectively in that environment, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fair. What motivates you to keep going? So you've got your kickback year, but what motivates you to just
Well,
keep
I
kicking?
just love swimming, and I particularly love swimming outside. So I actually don't need any goals to motivate me. The goals are great; they really add to it. But I'm very happily at the moment in Northeast Florida, in Jacksonville, and there's a great ocean swim group down here. So I'm incredibly lucky that I can swim in the ocean now before the northern states can. And it's just every time I jump in the ocean, it's a different weather conditions, different environment, different swim, but it's great. And you know that that's the piece that the events, the goals, all that stuff are terrific. But that's why I do it, because I just love being out there, and swimming. And I like the pool. I mean, if I have to be in the chlorine box for the winter, I have to be in the chlorine box for the winter, and I'm going to have fun, with the workouts and the events and stuff. So
Mhm. That's great. What advice would you give an aspiring marathon swimmer?
um, have fun, enjoy the journey, make the most of everyone around you that you spend time with, because I mean, I think there's so much that you can enjoy with that. And I think possibly, particularly for marathon swimming, there is this risk that you're going to get to your event destination and you're not even going to be able to get in the water, because the conditions won't allow it. So I think be really enjoying the journey and really making the most of the journey. I'm definitely better at that now than I used to be. And for me, part of the whole channel thing was like, I'm going to have so much fun going to Ireland and going to Croatia again, and going to do these swim vacations and camps, and that's going to be so cool. As well as the event itself. And the more I think you can build that into your sort of your experience of marathon swimming, I think the more you're going to just, you're inevitably going to get more out of it. It's much more about the journey for me than it is the destination, although the destinations are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cherry on the cake, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing I personally believe in, and others, I'm a huge fan of variety. I mean, I love variety in everything I do in all of my swimming. But for a marathon swim, I'd say make sure you get variety. Swim in the ocean, swim in every condition. Swim in the lake, swim in every condition. Swim cold, swim hot, swim. Get that variety. You'll enjoy it. It'll build your resilience, and it will definitely help you, I think, in whatever marathon goals you're setting. So I think those two things.
That's good advice. Thank you. Who's inspired you in your marathon swimming journey?
I did think about this because I've heard you ask this question of lots of other people. I'm inspired, I think, mainly by the people I swim with, the people around me. So I'm inspired to be swimming with Cheryl and Alyssa and Bob. And these, they're tough ladies working on big goals, and you can see the focus that they're and these are, each one of them is taking on challenges that are pushing them beyond where they've been. And I think that's inspiring. Swimming with Marsha was it was a little extreme in the sense that it's like, wow, but again, it was inspiring to see that focus, that process, that determination. So for me, it's the people I know and I swim with mainly. But I'm sort of inspired by the big swims, the famous swims. But in a way, I'm more in awe of them, or I'm more kind of marveling at them than the sort of the personal inspiration. The personal inspiration for me comes from these great people I hang out with and I get to swim with. And Melanie is another one. I mean, she was actually very inspirational to me because I hope if you have her on, I haven't stolen her thunder, but her story, I'll give very briefly. So in Croatia, she showed up to prepare to do a channel relay, and she was only going to do a 2-hour qualifying swim. And we jump into the qualifying swim, and before we know it, Melanie, oh yeah, no, I've just done the 6-hour qualifying swim. So so she's kind of very quiet, just it's like, wow, that's so great. And then so she does her relays and she signs up for this Jersey thing, and it's like, well, she can't, the Jersey thing is blown out, so I'll do the channel. It's like, wow, that's really brave. I mean, I'm not sure I'd be ready a year ahead of the goal I'd set myself to go do that. So that's inspiring. And then the craziest thing was that the story of her swim, which was, she starts in the middle of the night. She's heading down onto the marina with all of her kit bags and her phone and her water bottle and her backpack with everything. It's the middle of the night, and she walks off the marina and drops into the water, literally just before she's supposed to get on the boat. And she can't get out because she's like got all this waterlogged stuff. So it literally took 4 guys, including Stuart and Sean, the pilot and co-pilot of my boat, and her pilot and his boat, to drag her out. Now she's completely sodden. She's just about, it's cold, it's dark. She's just about to jump in to do a channel swim. And it's like, I'm thinking, how would I handle that? I mean, that is, but she says, oh, no. Fine. She said, I was thinking, oh, I hope they don't make me not do the swim. I really want to do the swim. So they strip her off. They hang all her clothes up all over the boat to try and dry them off. And she's just, she just goes down, she jumps in the water, and she just kind of like gets on with it. Her observer notes are hilarious. It's like observer notes. Well, Melanie fell in the marine, all her clothes are completely sodden. They hung up all over the boat, which now looks like a Chinese laundry. Oh God, the wind's picked up, and I think Melanie's trousers have just blown off into the channel. So all that stuff. And then in my observer's notes, Deborah, who is Melanie's crew, is writing, well, we're halfway across the channel and are keeping an eye out, but still no sign of Melanie's trousers. So so just that the way in which that her calmness and sort of focus on not letting stuff like that, it's not big inspiration, but it's kind of real,
Yeah.
seeing how people deal with these sort of things. And then the other person who I haven't met, but I'm just like in awe of, is a lady called Jackie Coble, who I hadn't heard of. When I was over in Dover, it was the anniversary of the Battle of Britain, and planes flying over. And Jackie's a huge British patriot. I think she actually lives in Dover, and she's posting all this really cool stuff about Dover being bombed during the war, and she quite possibly had family who went through all that. And so she's this really kind of tough, patriotic lady. She swam the channel, I think, quite recently, and set a record for how long, the longest. She was out there for 28 hours.
Wow.
And so this is a lady who is just not going to give up. She's out there, and she's just going to keep going until she got there.
Yep.
So that stories like that, I find, and you won't hear about, you don't see the headlines written about these people, but there are so many people like this who have great stories, and I think they're very inspirational. They're fun and they're inspirational.
Yeah, I agree a lot. Thank you very much for sharing your story today, Guy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Do you want to take Marathon Swim Stories with you? Subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Want to connect with like-minded limit pushers? Join us for Marathon Swim Stories live on Tuesdays at 5:30 a.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, 13:30 GMT. Thanks for watching.